something is against the law. The police. Speech is the fourth wall made permanent, and at its window, prayer collects. Modicum of hot noise, insisting in a fog we find the breeze and greenery beyond the glass most critical. Hours clench their fists and begin nursing candlelight modeled after the soliloquy of winces Vincent Price delivers on horseback, lack of British accent brazenly flickering Witchfinder General, 1968. I cannot verify the features of the sunset on the evening I watched that movie projected on an island in a northern state, July 2011. In a subsequent dream, he and his horse upbraid me when I describe the electric current running through them to you. I say to Price of the horse, let it eat a hot aglow, white magnesium blend of oats and apps to animate some running, not in its feet, but spine. And they, Price, the horse, snatch apples from my briefcase faster than anyone moves, even in movies. Then I wake. They were correct to steal. I wasn't even really speaking to them so much as you in a fuzzed prototype of what turns out to be this essay. Presenting myself as a salesman of apples rather than a holy ghost, as other apple salesmen will. Do you see how already in my account those unremembered features of the movie, not dream, are flattening to a billboard, magnetizing your gaze up from some interstate's white lines toward a romping, airbrushed puppy and beaming child, so that if you were to trust me not to bleed you of your brain's money today, I have to be equally against whatever I'm selling and the light it emits? In the movie, Price and the horse drone rough woe, trotting o'er the land, in a series of sinister nasal eruptions concerning the whipping of witches, between shots of various actresses' wide eyes and buxom screaming. Outside, the ocean flicked light at the house. Seals burped on their rock behind a fat wad of cedar and hanging moss. That the horror should be taken as comedy, watching it transpire on a bedsheet screen with a collection of stoned middle-aged men, was reflected in their interrupting to briefly bear Kitsch's thick shit for us with a dramatization of their own. Vexed, they said things like, it's not the hottest hot chocolate I've had, but it will do. And what's going on? Is he hitting her? This is horrible. And rain makes a hooligan out of the soundtrack. I can't hear the actors. It is now impossible to remove these men from the movie. It would be like editing out the horse, Price straddling thin air 5 feet off the ground. They were too high to listen to anything. It was they who were masterpieces. Price watched them from the screen and dropped his weapons. It darkened, and those I loved slept to the west. So I joined them, believing art stalks us in broad daylight anyway. Child with blade, drawn to slit our throats as we cross through a country she calls home and stays young in, always forgetting that our throats are billions and our breath spills between. But forgetting our power is requisite as deliberately confusing the sound of a fire truck over the hill with a wolf's cry. Art needs us no less than we it. Otherwise, the poor kid follows to our cities to grow old long before spilling a drop of our blood. Behind her, grown-up villains, born with beards, follow all and never die. Some weeks before seeing it, you and I walked over the Brooklyn Bridge in rain without speech, though that conversation was of a glamour I did not know I knew how to submerge my brain in, much less physical hands. For we are only pronouns, and as such suffer through deserts of dulled nerves. We walked in a net, so large the district slipped through one of its holes, taxis' dry groans like houses gathering the glow of an evening meal. If it means hosting nightmare like stiff-wind sails, I'm not sure one needs to be so quiet. There are other modes of transportation. But need squeaks out from holes in demand, and demands rust according to our speed. I would be leaving for another hemisphere in the coming months, and in the interim was taking a crack at selling you on the benefits of keeping track of our faces and voices via Skype, instead of languishing in their absence for that duration, hoping to allay your fears that this program was a load of shit and would garble the both of us into delayed beeps and pixels, though I was also a bit of that mind. Despite our advances, we have not found a clear way to speak over oceans. One morning in October, you woke and told me you dreamed I'd been campaigning for it. I'd said, "You won't hear my actual voice, but a tone of it played on saxophone. Don't worry, they will still be my actual words, only spoken in actual saxophone," and proceeded to show you a shot of what my face would look like on the screen, bone structure and features intact, but with alternate translations of flickering color. You remained unconvinced, but were coming around when you woke. It is not impossible to fit and channel love through a glowing two-dimensional plastic screen, but it sucks. Something of the flesh thereby transmitted did not feel as regal as it should have to the eye alone. Not for one's features, but the spell they cast, like a metaphor about pheromones in which literal smells enter the face. One I am not capacious enough to invent at this juncture, where I am trying to speak in a grammar quick with weeping. Given our circumstances together under this hot blue lid, love requires better access to somatic swoon than this clusterfuck can bring to bear. It must be repeated until the figure hardens into something liquid as the human frame. Not impossible, for if you are reading this transmission, chances are our heartbreaks at this point in history are more alike than ever. I have never been better about being alone, but in recent years, waking up next to you had come to feel like having lungs, adamantine and hilarious. Moving away in December, I did not want to be reminded silence is vestigial, or for that matter, ever leave you again. So I'll swallow whole days shaved off a life in a country I might have known, but never did. I did not know how to tell you about air, nor now, even inside the parcel of this attempt. When we did speak, lo and behold, it was delayed in the wires. You hung up on me once in anger, and though I might have deserved, and it's unconscionably adolescent to do so, I will admit it, I wanted to die, as much for knowing that so many others have felt crippled endlessly by something as fleeting as fighting with a lover, as for the digital clang the program's receiver made when you retreated from that window and went back to the winterized room in the States. I felt a cartoon version of myself was already living in, an even more inert Pinocchio, wan and drawn by Disney. I took to the streets looking to foster attention constellations that would protect us from all the ill we foist upon one another unwillingly, without ever thinking that love, against our beliefs and wishes, seems to require it. In hot multitudes of names and inflections beyond what an hour's exchange can bear, a shitload of invention required, and in love, invention is as difficult a gift to give another as ever. Wanting neither fire nor water, we do our people in police's voices. But when no one wanted to talk outside, I went straight back to the screen. I've never seen so many movies. In November, on the way to hear poets read, we were pulled over, and though I had only been speeding, the young officer, clad in sunglasses despite the clouds and bruised light, asked me to step out of the car and accompany him to his cruiser, where he ran background checks. You shrugged, and I, quietly alarmed, not because I had done wrong, but an exposure to force coiled more tightly than my own comprehension or sway, followed him and fixed myself in his front seat. He asked if this was the first time I'd seen one of these from the inside, and I said it was. Behind us, bottled in a clean and perforated plexiglass pane, a German shepherd continued completely losing her shit. The officer told her to shut up, and as he ran the program on our licenses, he asked what I did. I told him I was a teacher, though the truth was I was unemployed. Ashamed of the lie, I added I was also a writer. At this, he looked up. He asked what kind of writing I did, and I said poetry. He smiled, and I don't think I'm lying to think I discerned a muted affection, but will never be certain, as sympathy and contempt often run the same drills on the field of the face. What kind of poetry? I told him that was the hardest and worst question he could ask, and at that he laughed. I told him most of it didn't rhyme, and he repeated that out loud. He asked if I knew any poems by heart, of my poems by heart, and at that I laughed, said I didn't, but wanting to offer something for his seemingly earnest curiosity revealed a key poem in the book I was writing was titled Appetite Technician. He nodded and thought about that for a moment, asked, "What's the title of the book?" I never thought to ask his name. Another dream. 6 white horses right on a wall, their pencils repeatedly clattering to the floor. They coat their hooves with rubber cement and step on the pencils with superannuated care. Continue. Piles of shavings litter the ground around them. Their riders sit at a nearby table playing online poker, but when the wind picks up, the internet fails. The riders curse and mount the horses, ride to a meadow where the connection can be repaired. Given to fright when the offending riders root for their whips, the 6 horses run together from wall to meadow, and when they arrive, they pick a variety of pens from the grass with their teeth. When the riders are finished gluing wires, they remount. Tired out, the horses trot back to the wall with the pens. But 6 more horses have arrived at the site, black as coal and without riders, painting over the pencil. They turn and stare at the first 6 with brushes hanging limply from their lips, and the riders dismount to inspect the new designs. This is one method by which horses have been trained to study the collapse of repetition. A gesture runs deeper than the improbable stone. Someday the sun will have swatted our friends underground, where our childhood toys are buried, and will we then wish to share a bed with strangers and speak with them about all we know who have continued against the promise of a grid, diminishing even as its points sharpen into hyperbolic focus when evening settles down? The reading lamp goes on. It does a different chemical reaction than other light upon the skin, and at that I do not know. A trust between all inert objects punctures night, such that we are forced to admit that nouns are either alive or more active than we have imagined. And this is also involved in our capacity to learn not only how to love correctly, but for the survival of our species. As for the former, it seems I can only write this when we are apart. So perhaps as strangers, we might learn to love to critical exhaustion the versions of each other who remain but avatars for functions impossible to be performed, except in a state of radical and unknowing patience, which works more brightly when subsumed into the muscle of our waking lives. So it's no mistake we want to fuck, now as we write this sentence in May. Your breath the only grammar I want to see in color before the night is over. Your speech and glances made mythic by the fact that it is you who speaks. But even myth refutes demands submitted in the story so far as it's been told. A wolf wails in the distance. And on the mantel above the fireplace, a key spins in a little horse as she slows her hooves, and when she stops, the room slips into a capable darkness. May this invention issue a multitude of orders, and may you disobey them all. That shatter records will shore their action against our luminous attention to beam beyond a flat and white refrain. Plucked from the ground like ribbons from a gift box packed with a doll, Earth needs our bones gliding over it precisely less than we the song issuing 5 or 6 feet above the green. The decorations who make the gift thoughtful should not be confused with the doll itself in all its mute and painted glamour. As living matter, plastic cells, lush with the spell of carnal affinity flinging through our veins, is not the same as life. We love the world for what it reflects as much as for what it contains. Now in July, I sleep, though others I love sleep far from the coast, and I have trouble remembering my own dreams, rendering the one about Price and the horse remarkable for its knife-edged amplitude, even if you will never know whether or not my actual words were a lie to move you into believing. As belief is the only house we are told we are built to sleep inside. The movie sleeps in the air itself, the men in its glowing reviews. By the light of the candle, it is Price and the horse who are a house. You and I are not until cold wind and rain incorporates us into its virus of bedtimes. Though on the bridge we were soaking wet and the money light was streaming, and here I am again continuing to drag you under that roof. All the sunset does in memory is bloom like a brand, gold pill dissolving into the body of water nearest our pillow. I'm not against the sunset, but its problems and advertisements are myriad as sleep. I recommend you go outside, see one with your own 2 eyes, and I'm not selling anything free. Here is another dream for no money. The window weeps, a bag of light, into the bedroom, white clatter, chased by humming filaments, and you place your face still as flint by the light, and your face clicks and fills with liquid. A holy ghost runs from your eyes and nose. A holy ghost green on your sleeve winds its way down amalgams of streets with you while you speak to strangers. And at home even your ice cubes pray in the dark, and the dark weeps, sneezes, and as night drives in its wilted nails, Price hacks the coffin in unscreened window, and the holy horse freezes.
That's fantastic, Dan.